This week is Does God Hide the Truth? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In last week's reading, we saw the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals his beauty in the sunsets, his tender sympathy in the rain, his wrath in the thunder, his restless energy in the brooks, his power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths and there are esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expressions, there lies impenetrable mystery. Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, "By me the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I in them." God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Shankya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar Ashidha, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. As Jesus said in chapter 3 of the Gospel of St. John, the wind blows where it wills. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Master answered this question very clearly. Does God hide the truth? And Master said, of course he does. And he said, what skill would it reveal on the part of the author of the whole story if you could guess the ending right away? If you could figure out, oh, this person is actually that person and so on. If the whole drama was just revealed, it wouldn't be that exciting of a story. So he said that with a little bit of a sense of humor, because even though we might enjoy the mystery, we don't like it when we're the ones lost in the maze, when we are the ones confused in the story. We would like to know the truth. We would like to get out of the maze. And so this is the challenge of our existence. This is the challenge of the spiritual path. That on the one hand, God is simple, God is at the heart of everything. And on the other hand, in every manifestation we see around us, it can be very complex, it can be very complicated, it can be very mysterious. Now, what's lovely that Swamiji says in this reading, which is very essential, is that a willingness to seek the underlying reality behind all experiences is essential on the spiritual path. Putting it another way, we have to ask ourselves, what is true? What is true? In a sense of wanting to know the answer. Sometimes people will ask that question saying, what is true? Anyway, if you try to argue with them about spiritual things, argue because they're not necessarily open to it. Well, what is true anyway? Usually the answer to that is, my desires. My desires are what is true. What I wish to be true is true. In such a case, if that's the case, then such a person is not ready really to seek spiritually further. To be on the spiritual path, to be a devotee, you have to care what is true. Meaning, it matters to me what is true, or if something isn't true. If it doesn't matter, that look, whatever, I'm just going to go with the flow, then we have to wait until that understanding comes, that I do care about finding out the truth about myself. So if I find out that I've been wrong and I acknowledge, okay, actually, I have been wrong, this other way is the right way to be, I will go with that because it's true and I want to be in truth. Now, how do we get to that point of going from I don't care what is true to I do care? Well, it would be lovely if it was just through, Divine Mother just slipping us a little John Green and saying, care about what is true now. And we say, okay, then you'll get another John Green, maybe. But usually it comes to a slap instead. We didn't know that something was the case. We thought it was, and we walked down this wonderful path and then fell right into a pit. And if we had had our eyes open, if we had seen the signs that there was a big, arrow pointing down, pit, and everything, but we were very happy, then we blundered into it. Okay, time for a wake-up call, as it's the phrase is, that we need to find out, I missed this. This pit was right here. If I had known about it, I wouldn't have fallen into it. So let me learn how to discover such things in the future. So it is often the case that we are driven to this understanding through suffering. It's not fair. Master said to God that you created this whole hobby of yours, and you created suffering, but you never suffer. You're always happy. Why do you try your experiment of suffering on us? And he said, that God tells me the answer. I'm bringing them all back to me. So what does it matter? And Master said, I know the answer, but I don't like it. He said, I fight with Divine Mother every day about this. Because he said, I am able to, through Samadhi, see that these are all pictures on a screen. These are all shadows and light. He was in a movie theater having this experience, this cosmic experience with the big movie. And he was seeing this, as he said, it was a terrible horror picture they were seeing in the theater. And he said, Lord, I see that it's just shadows and light. Nobody is killed, nobody is hurt. But what about the audience? They don't know it. And so it's not fair. So we have to keep in mind that whether it's fair or not, it's a little bit too bad. It's sort of like somebody being in prison and saying it's not fair. It may not be fair, but the fact is we have to get out. We have to find a way out. And the interesting thing about this prison, I sometimes like to think that Divine Mother has put us all in jail, but she's left all the doors unlocked. And so if we just try the door, then it opens. But if we sit there and say, oh, too bad, problem, then we don't get to go anywhere. This happened to me once. I was trying to get to a place and no one was there, the door was closed, and I was with a friend and I just said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We needed to get in. The people who were supposed to meet us weren't here. How are we going to do it? I just can't believe it. Maybe I should try to call them. And my friend said, well, why don't we just try the door? And it was open. How ridiculous, we have to have that sense of adventurousness, although it didn't take quite a lot of bravery on her part, but I had just accepted as a foregone conclusion, it's not going to work out, without even first trying the handle. So don't underestimate God's part. Divine Mother was there, she had met us, and she had unlocked the door. It normally would have been locked, but in this case, by some magic, it wasn't locked, and so everything could proceed just as before. Just as we wanted, in other words. So, we have to be willing to seek the truth, to ask what is true, and to assume that there is a positive answer. When I phrased that question earlier, what is true? That obviously my voice is implying a little bit of a negative attitude. And Master said there are two kinds of doubt. There is positive doubt and negative doubt. And so he said, negative doubt asks the question assuming there is no answer. And positive doubt asks the question wanting to know the answer, knowing there is an answer and wanting to know. So it's fine to question, it's fine to explore. It's important to deepen our understanding. It's important to balance our intellectual growth with our spiritual growth, with our devotion and everything. But again, with a positive attitude. Why? Well, first of all, positivity brings solutions. It brings answers. But the other is that it's remembering that God wants to help us. God is the one giving us these challenges. Why? So that we become stronger. We had a question yesterday in one of our classes. Someone said, how do we handle frustration? I'm in a situation where I try to get something done and then it all gets ruined. And then I start again and I build up some momentum and then once again everything gets ruined. And I start to wonder, why should I even bother with doing anything if it's all just going to get knocked over? And I said to him, I was in a period of my life, I remember rather vividly, that I had that same feeling for a long time, more than a year, that I was trying to build a house and I put one brick down, and then as soon as I put the other brick down over it, Divine Mother came and knocked them over. And so it was just like, okay, that's funny, haha, and then trying again, and once again, just these bricks, I couldn't get anything seemingly going, no momentum could be created and sustained. And this was unusual for me because normally I was used to kind of, you put a brick and it stays there. You put another brick and it stays there, and you can get something after a while kind of impressive looking. And nothing was coming together. But I realized at the end of that period that my gain had been inward, that I had built up more endurance, that I had built up more courage to plow on even when the way wasn't clear. I had always depended on being able to see, okay, at least this is the next step. And in that situation, for that period of time in my life, in the job I was in, I couldn't see the way forward any day. But I had to keep trying. It was a new business, it was a new venture, we were trying to forge ahead in a way that we hadn't done before. And so, though it eventually did work out and had some level of success eventually, my gain was having that faith that though for 18 months the blindfold was on, eventually it lifted, or eventually I was able to see through the fog, and it helped me. The next time the fog came, okay, it's foggy. Fine, we don't have much fog in Chennai, but you can imagine fog. Smoke. Think of the morning after Deepavali. That's what it looks like. You can't see anything. And so, bogey, yes, even better. You can't even see, you can't even breathe. So it works out well. Stay inside. So that need to realize that even in a frustrating situation, even if everything we're doing keeps getting knocked over, that it is what we become through the experience, rather than whether the actual outward thing succeeds or not. In any case, even if it does succeed, suppose we build this glorious building and it's so wonderful and everyone says, you know, where does the Guru Pravesham and all this stuff, and there's great praise in the newspaper about our building, eventually the building will crumble or fall or be knocked down so someone can build apartments instead. Or any of these things. Or we will be gone and not even know or care with how the building's doing now. It's all still temporary. So even if it's a beautiful success, it is what we become through those experiences. We are the piece of art we are trying to perfect. We are the building we are trying to create. We are trying essentially to make our lives a beautiful piece of art, a beautiful skyscraper, as Master said, the spiritual skyscrapers of India is the way he put it, of the talking of the great saints. And so we really, that is the truth of our existence, is how to get out, to become one with God. How do we know this? How do we find this out? Well, certainly the scriptures tell us. Certainly our experience tells us that when I go in one direction, I suffer. When I go in another direction, I feel joy. So let me go more in that direction. But then it comes down to the need for intuition, as it says in the reading and as it said in the affirmations reading. We need the power of intuition to know. Remember, Master said intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. That's intuition. That is our true knowing faculty, not reason, not logic, not information, but intuition. And the easiest way to develop intuition, obviously, is meditation. But we have to go deeper than that. As it says in the reading, that we can see the sunlight, we can see the rain, and we can interpret God's love through the sunlight and God's tears through the rain and so on. But he said even in the most deepest expression or experience of God, still there will be something more hidden, something more subtle, some deeper depths to plumb. Master put it this way, that even if you have a vision of Divine Mother, to see lambent in her shining eyes the consciousness of God behind it. He said, look to the eyes, look beyond the form. Always go beyond the form. So even, if you're seeing Divine Mother, I don't know, I haven't had such a vision, but I imagine my first thought isn't going to be, okay, Master said, there she is, Master said to look in the eyes. Okay, you just feel that joy of that experience, and we get these kinds of feelings all the time. But then we have to remember, but yet there's more. There's even more. Someone was telling me not too long ago that, actually it was quite a while ago, but that I meditate. I know we're supposed to meditate longer and longer and longer, but I meditate, and as soon as I feel peace, then I stop meditating, because I'm feeling the peace. And I thought, that's a new one. I haven't heard that. Because I feel peaceful, I don't meditate. And so I thought a minute, and then I said, well, you could try to continue meditating, because you might be able to feel more peace. So, yeah, it was motivating. So it's that thing we have to remember. It was an innocent question, but it actually speaks to one of the challenges we face on the spiritual path once we've been on it a little while, which is complacency. That Inikapura, I have enough peace, joy, anything. I have enough. I am doing well. I no longer shout as much. I smile more often. My BP has come down. So I'm doing well. And I notice that I understand things that other people don't understand. It's already starting to get on delicate waters here if we're busy judging others. And then we feel I'm much better than I used to be, which is, I'm sure, is true and is wonderful and cause for celebration. But don't we want to be able to say that 10 years from now, that I'm much better than I used to be? Swamiji writes that in The New Path, how often I wish that I could have known more, been deeper in my awareness of Master's stature, of who he was, when I was actually with him. I think of all that I have gained since that time, in the years, the decades that followed my time with him, and how lovely it would be if I could have had this clarity and understanding of who he was then. But he said, but I know that it's hopeless, because even, hopefully, 2 decades from now, I would feel the same way. And in fact, interestingly, 2 decades later, or a little bit more, he revised The New Path. He rewrote the book from his newer level of consciousness and his sense of wanting to go through the book again, actually not long before his passing. And that's how it was originally called The Path, and then it became The New Path. And so it's very important to remember that we can always gain more. Not with a stressful sort of self-critical, I'm not getting enough out of this situation, I should be gaining more. Obviously tension is not the right direction to go in. But to remember God has more to share. Master was once told by someone that someone else had said, I'm no longer meditating because I'm trying to hang on to the joy of that first meditation that I had. And Master said, that's ridiculous. That's like someone saying, I don't want to eat anymore because I'm still savoring the memory of my past meal, of my last meal. He said, you get hungry again, you need to eat again. And so similarly with us, we can always go deeper. God is Satchidananda, as you know, as Master translated, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. And he said that ever new, Master added the word ever new, because obviously Ananda, that ever new is not implied literally in the translation, but Master said it is ever new. It isn't, as Swamiji said, that you wake up in the morning in such a state and go, oh, what's this bliss again? He said it's ever new. And we have those experiences ourselves in meditation or in life when a happy coincidence happens, or you get saved from something dire, or in meditation you suddenly have an insight about some problem. That moment, that joy, that thrill is ever new. It's not that, oh yeah, I had some idea and now yeah, it occurred to me that this and that. That's just mental. When it comes intuitively, when you feel God's touch behind it, you feel that comfort, that thrill, and it's that moment. And so that kind of experience is a taste of this ever newness of how every day in every way God is special, makes himself special. And remember, he's interested in you. It isn't as if he has a list of PAN numbers and somehow yours isn't on there, so you're being forgotten or neglected. He's, as Master said, he's throbbing in your own heart, the nearest of the near and the dearest of the dear. So, as he also said, it's not that he forgets us, it's that we forget him. So let's stop forgetting him. You can set a reminder on your phone to wake yourself up out of that, to go off every hour or every half hour, or every minute if you like, to stay awake, stay aware. Remember, this is God's show. And also as his show, it means he's the one responsible for everything. So we have to do our part, but not more than our part. We have to take care of those things that he has given us to take care of, but still, he's the one really looking after. Even in our own lives, in our own families, you can say in some ways we're like a babysitter, more than directly involved, because he's the Divine Mother. We may be caring for everyone on his behalf, but still, it is he, the one guiding everyone's destiny, and he's also the one loving them through us, and perhaps loving us through them. It's one big show, as one poet, Emerson, said, where Jove nods to Jove behind these forms, where he would have said Vasudeva, but actually he loved, of course, the Indian teachings, where Vasudeva nods to Vasudeva behind these different forms. And so it is really God playing all the parts. But as I said, it's a wonderful show, but it's our job to get out of the show. And so this is really the truth behind all the experiences. This is the truth we're driven to. But as I said, the suffering and joy lead us to a certain amount of education, but the rest of it comes through intuition. At a certain point, we just have to know this in our hearts. This is what we want. We grasp it intuitively. That's why it's hard to explain. There was a story of Saint Bernadette of Lourdes in France. She was a great saint. There's a beautiful film about her life called The Song of Bernadette, and Master saw it in the theaters when it came out. But at the very beginning of the film, it has these words. It says, to those who believe, to those who have faith, no explanation is necessary. And to those who don't believe, no explanation is possible. And or maybe it was reversed, but it's the same thing in any case. It's because if you have that intuitive understanding, you just know it isn't blind. We can't just merely believe in something that hasn't been tested. We need to test it in order to have faith. As Swamiji said, I can believe in someone, in their friendship, for example, but it's only when I've seen them tested that I can have faith in them. And so remember that in our own beliefs and even in our own relationships. Someone may seem wonderful and then crumble at the first sign of opposition, at the first challenge. It's only when you see people tested, their loyalty tested, for example. I don't say go out and try to test it, but we need these kinds of experiences to build our faith in what our hope is, what our expectation is, but then also what the truth is. And then work with that truth. So, ultimately, if we meditate, if we practice Kriya, if we do these things, all of this becomes a beautiful experience. We start to see God's face everywhere, that these things are no longer hidden, that we are finding different kinds of experiences. Like Master went to a shop in Laguna Beach, which is sort of in the area of Los Angeles broadly, And he used to go by this place where they sold shortbread. Every time I say shortbread, just think murka or something like that. I know it's sweet, I guess, so then, I don't know, Mysore pak. Yeah. He would go to this Mysore pak shop and go to the beach. And so he liked to get these things, and it wasn't that he, was attached to it or anything, but as he said, a master needs little things like this, little foibles or little hobbies or something to stay in the body. Some level of human interaction, some level of human personality to keep themselves in the body. Ramakrishna would come out of samadhi and then ask for a cigarette or a smoke to get himself grounded back into this reality. I wouldn't recommend it. If you have the samadhi, then you're in a position to be able to determine it for yourself. But otherwise, it's just a smoke. So Master went to this shop and asked someone to go in and get some shortbread, and she came out and she said, they don't have any more. And he said, Divine Mother, how come? It wasn't that he was saying, Divine Mother, I beg on the strength of my life for shortbread, I must have it. It was nothing like that. And it wasn't even that he was saying, am I being punished? He said, Swamiji described it as Master was used to being guided by intuition, and if he had been guided there, he was used to things working out. And so he just asked him, my mother, how come? And he said at that moment he saw a ray of light descend from the heavens and shine upon this building. And a moment later the owner came running out with a bag of shortbread and said, please take this, I want you to have it. I made this for a local customer and was saving it for them, but I want you to have it, I can make another batch for them. And so how much sweeter than if the first time the disciple had gone in and gotten the shortbread, it would have just been no story. We wouldn't even know. How many times did she go in and get the shortbread, and those stories are undocumented. But something of this, that it turned into a beautiful expression of Divine Mother's love in that moment, playing with him. She plays with all of us. And she's just saying, try this now, and as Haridas Ji of Bangalore says, that sometimes Divine Mother gets lonely. And that's why sometimes she'll create a little havoc in our lives, because then suddenly we'll remember her. So if we remember her all the time, it becomes just a joy. And the easiest way to do that, yes, we can use affirmation prayer, but again, the easiest way is just to meditate. The more we meditate, the more we put ourselves in that consciousness, the more we spend time with Divine Mother. And remember, there's really no substitute for it. Once we've been on the path a number of, time units, I won't quantify them, but once we've been on the path for a while, as I said, that complacency can start to come in, that I'm doing well enough. But there's no way around, for example, Kriya. Through our practice of Kriya, we just grow more quickly. And through our meditation, we feel peace. Again, today, I would like to feel today's peace, not some cumulative peace that I may be feeling now. I may feel up till now, but we're dipping ourselves in that peace. We have grown quickly through Kriya, and we will continue to grow through our meditation. But that, it's sort of like putting gas in the gas tank. It needs to be done to keep everything going. I don't say, if you don't, there will be some terrible consequence or anything like that. But rather, it just keeps life so easy, so sweet. And we notice that because we meditate one day, and then the day that we don't meditate, the next day, everything is kashtam all of a sudden. Everything is difficult. Either everybody is irritating all of a sudden. They must have sent a memo around saying, do whatever you can to irritate me. And so we're acting very well at this. Or everything is difficult. Things got delayed. This didn't work. I had this problem. Whereas yesterday, everything was going well. And you may have noticed that actually yesterday things didn't go well, but we went well. That all this thing happened and no big deal. Rather than getting frustrated about it, we just moved around it, and then the next thing revealed itself. Divine Mother was saying, you may have had this plan, but I had this plan. And so you can either go with your plan, which goes nowhere, or you can go with my plan. And when we meditate, we put ourselves in harmony with her plan. And so I do have to say that it isn't just our Kriya practice alone Because remember, Master said Kriya, or meditation, plus devotion is spiritual mathematics. It cannot fail to produce self-realization. It isn't just hours-long sitting. It is also devotion. It has to be devotion. And in fact, Swamiji was once asked to give a talk on the importance of technique. And it was a surprise because he said that technique is important, devotion is important. But remember, with technique without devotion, you can't get there. And devotion without technique, you can get there. And it was a shock to the person asking the question. I know, because I was the person asking the question. Just that I thought he was going to say how important it is to have a technique, to really know what you're doing and sort of optimize. When he was saying, don't get caught up in technique only. It must be done with devotion. We're practicing Kriya, we're meditating not just to become perfect. What does that mean? We're doing it to find God. There's a goal, there's a destination on this path. It isn't just a journey to greater and greater even self-expansion, unless you think of ourselves expanding ultimately into God's infinite expansion, expansiveness. And so, remember the goal. As Sister Gyanamata, Master's most advanced woman disciple, used to say, keep the goal ever shining before you. And it's a very good piece of advice, that even, does this, what if this is happening, what is that happening, what is my goal? Divine freedom, joy in God, in love. So keep that always in mind, in your heart. That, is this furthering my goal? Is this pulling me away from my goal? Never mind that. Let me just keep on marching. And we'll get there. It's amazing to see. Remember also that what Master said, he said, I see you all as beings of light, beautiful aspects, flows, flames of God's love and light. That's how he saw us. That's how Divine Mother sees us. She doesn't see all the troubles and all that stuff. She just sees us as her own and says, please, come home. And she's helping us. So, keep that in mind. As I said, with meditation, with technique, but without devotion we can't get there. And with devotion we can get there. Master's second most advanced woman disciple never meditated at all. And Swamiji said to Master, how can she be so advanced if she doesn't do Kriya? And Master said, I do Kriya for her. So she had enough devotion and whatever else, that for whatever reason she had a strange karma where she didn't meditate or couldn't meditate, but she got there through devotion. As I think you all know this, but it's worth remembering every day, when Krishna said to Draupadi, why don't you learn yoga like your husbands? She said, I want to, Lord, but I can't stop thinking of you long enough to try. And she got there on devotion alone. Now, the thought has occurred to me, as it occurs often, that some people will use that as their justification for not practicing yoga. And I say, that's fine, if you cannot stop thinking about him long enough to try. That is, anyway, I'll leave it at that. So, let's keep God in our hearts. Let's keep God before our vision ever. And let's all find him together. God bless you.